The screams echo through the stone corridors. A figure approaches in the darkness, his footsteps deliberate, measured. The torchlight flickers across his face, but you cannot see his features clearly. He is hooded, masked by shadow and shame. The prisoner knows what comes next. Everyone in Rome knows what comes next when he arrives. But here's what history doesn't tell you. This man, this creature of nightmares, this instrument of Roman justice, he wasn't a sadist. He wasn't a monster who enjoyed his work. He was something far more terrifying. He was a necessity. His name was the Carnifex. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why even speaking his name was considered a curse in ancient Rome. To understand the Carnifex, you must first understand Rome. Picture the year 150 AD. The Roman Empire stretches from Britain to Mesopotamia, from the Rhine to the Sahara Desert. Over 70 million people live under Roman rule. The Colosseum stands magnificent in the heart of the city. Aqueducts bring fresh water to marble fountains. Senators debate philosophy in pristine forums. This is Rome at its absolute height. The Pax Romana, Roman peace. But beneath this civilization, beneath the marble and the glory, there exists a parallel system, a shadow infrastructure that keeps the peace through terror. Roman society was built on strict hierarchies. At the top, the emperor, the senate, the patrician families. In the middle, the plebeians, the common citizens with rights and protections. Below them, the freedmen, former slaves earning their place. And at the bottom, the slaves, human property with no rights whatsoever. But there was someone even lower than slaves, someone who existed outside this hierarchy entirely, someone who Romans would cross the street to avoid, someone whose touch was considered polluting, someone who could never enter a temple, never vote, never marry into a respectable family. The Carnifex. The Roman executioner wasn't just a job, it was a social death sentence. These men were considered infamous, disgraced. They lived outside the city walls in special quarters. Their children inherited their shame. Their very existence was necessary but utterly reviled. Why such hatred? Why such fear? Because in Rome, death wasn't just death. It was a theater. It was a message. It was power made visible. And the Carnifex was the artist who painted in blood. Let me tell you about Marcus. Marcus isn't the Carnifex, not yet. Marcus is just a boy living in the slums of Subura, the poorest district of Rome. He's 12 years old. His father died in the mines. His mother works in a tavern, serving wine to men who grab at her clothes. Marcus wakes up before dawn. He runs to the fountain to fetch water, racing the other children because the clean water runs out fast. He helps his mother prepare cheap meals, mostly grain porridge, sometimes with a bit of olive oil if they're lucky. He has a younger sister, Julia. She's 7. Marcus tells her stories about gladiators and heroes. He makes her laugh by imitating the pompous senators who walk through their neighborhood, noses held high against the stench of poverty. Marcus dreams of becoming a soldier. The legions take poor boys and give them training, food, armor, and a chance at glory. His friend Gaius already signed up last month. They promised to serve together. But Marcus's family needs money now. His mother is sick. The cough that started last winter never went away. The physician wants payment up front. Julia needs food. The landlord is threatening to throw them out. Then one day, a man comes to their door. He's well dressed, but something about him makes Marcus uncomfortable. The neighbors quickly retreat into their homes when they see him. "I hear you're strong," the man says. "I hear you need money." "Yes, sir," Marcus replies. "I can work. I can carry anything. I'm very strong." The man smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes. "I'm sure you are. I represent the office of the public executioner. We need an apprentice. The pay is very good, triple what the legions offer. Your family would never go hungry." Marcus's mother appears in the doorway, leaning against the frame. Her face goes pale. "No," she whispers. "Not that. Anything but that." But she's coughing again, hard enough that she has to sit down. Blood flecks her lips. Marcus looks at his sister. She's thin, so thin. "What exactly would I have to do?" he asks. The first month, Marcus doesn't execute anyone. Instead, he cleans. The Carnifex's workplace is beneath the Tullianum prison, in the ancient dungeons carved into the rock of Capitoline Hill. This is where Rome keeps its most dangerous prisoners, those awaiting execution. Marcus's job is to clean the blood, scrub the stones, maintain the tools. At first, they're just objects, a sword, a rope, a wooden post, chains. But his new master, the current Carnifex, a man named Decimus, who never speaks about his own past, teaches Marcus their purpose. That sword must be sharp enough to cut through the spine in a single stroke, Decimus explains, his voice flat, emotionless. If you take 2 strokes, the crowd gets angry. The prisoner suffers more. Do you understand? 1 stroke. 1, always. Marcus nods. He's sharpening the blade, focusing on the repetitive motion. It's just metal. Just an object. That rope must be checked for fraying, Decimus continues, pointing. 13 coils in the noose. Always 13. It's tradition. If the rope breaks during hanging, they'll blame you. They'll say you're incompetent. They'll mock you in the streets even more than they already do. Marcus learns that being a Carnifex means precision, technique, consistency. He learns the different methods: decapitation for citizens convicted of serious crimes, considered merciful, quick; hanging for common criminals, slow, public, meant to send a message; crucifixion for slaves and rebels, the ultimate humiliation, a death that takes days, where the victim suffocates slowly, pulling themselves up on pierced hands to draw each agonizing breath. And then there's the culeus, the sack, reserved for parricides, those who murdered their parents. The condemned is sewn into a leather sack with a dog, a rooster, a viper, and a monkey, then thrown into the Tiber River. Why those animals? Marcus asks. Because, Decimus says, the dog is loyal, what you are not. The rooster crows at dawn, you'll never see another. The viper is cunning and poisonous, like your betrayal. The monkey is almost human, a mockery of what you threw away. This isn't just execution. This is a ritual, symbolism, message. The second month, Marcus watches his first execution, a thief, a man who stole grain from a warehouse. In Rome, theft of state property is a capital crime. The man is maybe 30 years old. He's crying, begging. His wife is in the crowd screaming. Their children are with her. Decimus walks forward, hooded. The crowd jeers and throws refuse. Nobody looks at his face. The execution is professional. Quick, the man dies. But his family's screams continue long after. That night, Marcus vomits. He can't eat for 2 days. You'll get used to it, Decimus tells him. Or you won't. If you don't, leave now. This job destroys men who can't separate themselves from the work. Marcus thinks about his mother, about Julia, about the money he sends them every week. He stays. 6 months into his apprenticeship, Marcus assists in his first crucifixion. Nothing prepares him for it. The condemned man is a slave who killed his master. Under Roman law, when a slave kills their owner, every slave in that household must be executed. All of them. This is meant to incentivize slaves to police each other, to stop murders before they happen. There are 17 slaves from this household. 17 people who had nothing to do with the murder. Men, women, children. Some as young as 8 years old. This is wrong, Marcus whispers to Decimus. This is law, Decimus replies. We don't make the law, we enforce it. If you question it, you'll go mad. I've seen it happen. The crucifixions take place along the Via Appia, the main road into Rome. This is standard practice. Executions as public spectacle, as warning, as entertainment. Marcus's job is to help lift the victims onto their crosses, to hammer the nails, to ensure they're positioned correctly, so death comes slowly enough to make an impression, but not so slowly that the crowd loses interest. The technical details are what haunt him. The nails don't go through the palms. Those would tear through. They go through the wrists, between the bones. The feet are nailed to the side of the vertical post, knees bent. Death comes from exhaustion and asphyxiation. The victim must push up on their nailed feet to breathe. Eventually, after hours or days, they become too weak to lift themselves. They suffocate slowly, drowning in their own fluid-filled lungs. Sometimes, the Carnifex breaks the legs with an iron club to speed death. A mercy, if you can call it that. Sometimes, the authorities forbid this mercy, wanting the death to last longer. Marcus has to do this 17 times in 2 days. An old man who was the household cook, a young woman who worked in the garden, 2 brothers, stable hands, a mother holding her child. The mother is the worst. She's maybe 25, the child is 9. They're crucified next to each other. Please, the mother begs Marcus as he lifts the child. Please just make it quick. Please, she didn't do anything. None of us did anything. Marcus looks at Decimus. Decimus shakes his head almost imperceptibly. The magistrate wants a full display. That night, Marcus can still hear the child calling for her mother. He can hear the mother's screams. He drinks himself unconscious. It has become a habit. But here's the worst part, the detail that truly shows the horror of the Carnifex's existence. The next morning, Marcus has to go back and cut down the bodies. He has to check if anyone is still alive. Sometimes they last days. He has to process the corpses, throw them in mass graves outside the city, and burn the remains of the worst criminals. And then he has to go home, to his tiny room outside the city walls, and he has to sit alone because no one will speak to him. The neighbors avoid him, children throw stones, merchants refuse to serve him. When he walks through the streets, people spit at his feet and make warning signs. He is saving lives. His mother is recovering, his sister is eating, they have a decent apartment now, but he is dying inside. This is the true horror of the Carnifex. Not the executions themselves, but the psychological destruction of the executioner. The Romans created a position that was absolutely necessary for their system of justice and public order, then made the people who did that job into outcasts, into living ghosts. The Carnifex wasn't just executing others, he was slowly executing himself. But Marcus's story isn't unique. There were dozens of carnifexes throughout the Roman Empire. Every major city needed one. Every province required execution services. And the system was refined over centuries. In the early Roman Republic, executions were simpler affairs. The Sacresto Declaration, "Let him be sacred to the gods," meant anyone could kill the condemned without penalty. It was mob justice, chaotic, unpredictable. But as Rome grew into an empire, the state needed control, monopoly on violence, professional executioners. Thus, the office of the Carnifex became institutionalized. These men were organized into a guild, the Collegium Carnificum. They had ranks, training protocols, equipment standards. Senior carnifexes trained apprentices. Techniques were passed down, refined, perfected. They were paid well, very well, very well. A Carnifex could earn more than a skilled tradesman, sometimes as much as a mid-level administrative official. The state understood that someone had to do this work, and compensation was necessary. But the social cost was total. Carnifexes wore special clothing to identify themselves, usually red or dark colors. Some sources suggest they wore masks or hoods during executions. They lived in specific neighborhoods, usually near the execution grounds or outside the city limits. Their children inherited the profession. Who else would marry them? What other trade would accept them? Some carnifexes specialized. One might be an expert in crucifixion, another in beheading. Some handled the animals for damnatio ad bestias, execution by wild beasts in the arena, where trained executioners would goad lions and bears to attack condemned prisoners. The system required extensive infrastructure, torture chambers where the quaestio, judicial torture, was performed. In Rome, free citizens couldn't be tortured, but slaves could. The Carnifex often doubled as the questionarius, the torturer, extracting confessions. Storage facilities for tools, chains, crosses, ropes. These had to be maintained, inventoried, ready for use. Processing centers for bodies after execution. Mass graves, cremation pits. The Romans were efficient in their brutality. Training grounds where young apprentices practiced techniques on dummies, animals, eventually condemned criminals themselves. And here's what's truly chilling. This system worked. Crime rates in Roman cities were relatively low. Public order was maintained. The spectacle of execution served as an effective deterrent. The Carnifex was the hidden foundation of Pax Romana. The peace of Rome was built on the terror he instilled. Historians estimate thousands of people were executed annually across the empire. During the Christian persecutions, the numbers spiked even higher. During slave revolts like Spartacus's rebellion, the scale was staggering. Crassus crucified 6,000 captured slaves along the Via Appia, one every 40 meters for 20 miles. Behind each of those crosses was a Carnifex doing his job. Professional, efficient, damned. Let's return to Marcus, now 25 years old. He's been a Carnifex for 13 years. He's risen through the ranks. He's one of the most skilled executioners in Rome. His technique is flawless. His executions are swift, professional. He's also completely broken inside. He drinks every night. He has nightmares. He sees the faces of every person he's executed, hundreds now. He remembers their names when he can, their crimes, their last words. He's tried to keep a tally, a record, but he stopped at 300. The number became unbearable. His mother died 5 years ago, blessing him for his sacrifice. His sister Julia married a merchant and moved to another city. She doesn't write to him. She's ashamed. Marcus has no friends, no family, no future beyond the next execution. One day, he's ordered to execute a Christian, a young man named Tertius who refused to sacrifice to the emperor's statue. This was considered treason in Rome. The imperial cult wasn't just religion, it was political loyalty. Tertius is Marcus's age. He's calm as they prepare the crucifixion. He prays quietly. "Do you hate me?" Marcus asks him as they wait for the crowd to gather. He's not sure why he asks. He's never spoken to the condemned before. Tertius looks at him with clear eyes. "No, I pity you." "Pity me," Marcus laughs bitterly. "I'm alive. You're about to die. Are you alive?" Tertius asks gently. "Or did you die years ago, one piece at a time, with each person you killed?" Marcus has no answer. Tertius continues, "You think you're serving Rome. You think you're maintaining order. But you're not. You're feeding a machine that devours everyone, the condemned and the executioner both. This system needs you to be brutal, and it needs you to be despised. It requires your service and punishes you for giving it. Can't you see you're a victim too?" The execution proceeds. Marcus is professional as always, but Tertius's words stay with him. Here's the moral lesson that echoes across 2,000 years. Systems of brutality don't just destroy their obvious victims. They destroy everyone who participates in them. The Carnifex is the perfect symbol of institutional cruelty. Rome needed executions to maintain order, but it refused to honor the men who performed them. It created a necessary evil and then made that evil into a person, a scapegoat who absorbed all the moral guilt. This is how empires function. This is how systems of oppression sustain themselves. They distribute the moral burden so widely that everyone can claim innocence. The senator who passes the death sentence, he's just interpreting the law. The magistrate who orders the execution, he's just following procedure. The Carnifex who kills, he's just doing his job. The crowd that watches, they're just spectators. And yet, a human being dies. The machine of state violence requires operators, but it makes those operators into monsters, then punishes them for their monstrosity. We want to believe we're different. We want to believe our modern societies have evolved beyond this. But have we? We still have people who perform society's dirty work, who enforce harsh laws, who carry out policies that destroy lives, who operate systems of punishment and control. And we still, often, despise them for it, even as we benefit from what they do. The Carnifex forces us to confront an uncomfortable question. When we create systems that require cruelty, are we not all responsible for that cruelty? Can we really outsource our guilt to the person who holds the sword? Marcus, in my imagination of his story, never found an answer. Historical records don't tell us about individual Carnifexes' inner lives. They were beneath notice, beneath documentation, but we can imagine, and in imagining, we can learn. The Carnifex wasn't the villain of Roman history, he was a symptom. The true horror was a civilization that built its glory on systematic violence, then refused to acknowledge the human cost. The marble and the blood, the glory and the guilt, both were Rome. The story of the Carnifex doesn't end with Rome. Every civilization has had its executioners. Every empire has needed people to do its killing, and every society has had to decide, how do we treat the people who do what we consider necessary but despicable? In medieval Europe, executioners became feared celebrities. Some were famous, wealthy, and almost respected, but they still lived outside society, marked separate. In revolutionary France, Charles-Henri Sanson executed over 3,000 people during the Terror, including King Louis XVI. He was following orders. He was maintaining the new order. But when the revolution ended, was he a hero or a monster? In the 20th century, we industrialized execution. We tried to make it clean, medical, and professional. We created euphemisms, special treatment, executive action, enhanced interrogation. But the moral question remains: what happens to the person who pulls the trigger, pushes the button, throws the switch? And what does it say about us that we need them to do it? In my next video, I'm going to explore the most brutal execution method in human history, one that makes Roman crucifixion look merciful by comparison. It was practiced for over 2,000 years across multiple civilizations. The last recorded instance was in 1905, and the people who perfected it weren't barbarians. They were sophisticated, educated, refined. Which raises an even more disturbing question: is civilization actually becoming more humane, or are we just getting better at hiding the horror? If you want to understand the dark foundation that all societies are built on, you need to see this next video. But I'll warn you, once you see what humans are capable of doing to each other in the name of justice, order, and civilization, you can never unsee it. The Carnifex was just the beginning. Subscribe, turn on notifications. This journey into history's darkest corners is just getting started. And remember, when you look at the executioner, you're not just seeing a monster. You're seeing a mirror. The question isn't whether you would refuse to become a Carnifex. The question is, what would you do to feed your family? What would you sacrifice to survive? How much of your soul would you sell for security? Marcus made his choice. What choice would you make?